Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about the relationship between Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering as far as protection and these sibling products having to protect each other. All right, so let's talk about this. All right, so boy, oh boy, Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons do it great. all indicators are up. Dungeons & Dragons could not be doing better. We have a huge multi-billion-dollar franchise about to spin up in movies. It'll probably be bigger than Marvel MCU ever was, bigger than Harry Potter. It's all going to start with Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Dungeons & Dragons just released a spectacular triple book, slipcase, Spelljammer, which the OSR has nothing that even comes close to it, right? It innovated products and how products are published. It innovated slipcases. It's a slipcase that has a Dungeon Master Guide inside of it. The art is better than anything the OSR could ever even imagine. The writing is better than anything the OSR could ever imagine. It just embarrasses every OSR product that comes out on the daily, right? And that's just the latest thing that came out. Dungeons & Dragons is up, right? But Magic the Gathering, woo! They in trouble, baby. Right? Everybody's complaining. Literally, banks are complaining about Magic the Gathering. They're like, we don't think the value in Magic the Gathering is going to remain where it is. People who have positions in Magic the Gathering. Yes, people who buy so many cases of Magic the Gathering that they have positions the way a day trader would position in a company are whining about Magic the Gathering. Go look over at Rudys Alpha investment. It's so funny to watch this guy who has invested millions of dollars in Magic the Gathering and doesn't even understand what's happening with his product. He's just so outrageously, shockingly ignorant about this thing that he is literally investing millions into, right? And he just whines every day because he's ignorant. He's ignorant of the product. That he doesn't understand the impacts of connecting Magic the Gathering to Dungeons & Dragons. And so he makes a lot of ignorant statements about Dungeons & Dragons. This guy knows virtually, at this point, I think there's a point where he knew a lot about Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering has changed, and now he's just wallowing in ignorance. And then also players are incredibly upset. Collectors are incredibly upset. They're saying there's too many products that are being released. Magic the Gathering is in trouble. All right. Now, Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons are product siblings. They came up together, okay? And their histories are very entwined, right? And I'm not going to repeat it for you because I've had it before, right? All right, so let me tell you a story. All right, so when I was in elementary school, I got in a lot of fights when I was a kid, and it was always the same pattern, right? So I would run my mouth, and then somebody who could actually fight would be like, after school, I'm going to beat the living. I'm going to beat the living marshmallows out of you. And that would happen. It would happen probably once every 3 months. I got in 3 or 4 fights a year when I was in, I would say probably starting in second grade. And the thing is, I would actually walk home everywhere. You would just walk home. You'd walk blocks and blocks and blocks. It was terrifying, right? But probably good for us, I think. I don't know. All right, and yeah, that's debatable. All right, you know what? I will say this: it's great that kids don't get punched in the face today. Yeah, so it probably is better today than it was when I was a kid because I routinely got punched in the face for stuff I would say, right? So it was a thing, right? So in 5th grade, I was living in Racine, Wisconsin, and there were the Greco Brothers. Okay. The older Greco brother was in 5th grade, and the younger was in 3rd grade, okay? And this is a pattern, right? Now, this generally, I'm sorry, but in the 70s, things were a little more gendered. Girls would, girls would fight, but generally at the macro level, those fights were they would take place verbally, right? And they could be very upsetting, and they could be really cutting to those girls, and I actually think the pain might have been greater from not getting hit, right? But if you were a boy and you ran your mouth, you said something to somebody, you could get beat down for it, right? And this 3rd grader Greco brother, the younger Greco brother, he would run his mouth just like me, and he would get beat down. But the difference was the younger Greco brother had the older Greco brother, right? And as soon as anybody would lay hands on the younger Greco brother, the older Greco brother would show up and he would beat the living marshmallows out of that person, right? And it did not stand. And this was terrible because the younger Greco brother ran his mouth a lot and upset a lot of people, right? Because he knew his older brother would come in and take care of it, right? So this is what's interesting, right? Magic the Gathering. That's actually, so Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons got in trouble. 4th edition, okay? 4th edition. Right now that edition is dead, but historically it existed, okay? All right, when Dungeons and Dragons was called D&D 4E, it got into a lot of trouble, and the entire D&D community sundered in half, and people were like, do not want, right? And you know what Magic the Gathering did? It said, hey, no problem, no problem, brother Dungeons and Dragons, I got you covered. And it did, right? So I think 4th edition had made some major problems for Hasbro financially, okay? But Magic the Gathering was like, we making bank. Don't you worry about it. We got you covered, right? You go ahead and make your 4th edition books. They don't need to sell. You can do it for years, and they did. They did it for 6 years. They did it between 2008 and 2014, and those books did not sell, and people were upset, okay? But brother Magic the Gathering said, I got you covered. It's no problem. I got it. I'm going to come to your aid. And Magic the Gathering did. Now Magic the Gathering is on the ropes, and it's time for Dungeons and Dragons to step up, okay? Now, what's interesting is with the Greco Brothers, I remember this. So, brothers help each other when they get in trouble. So the Greco brother, no less than half a dozen times, I saw him beat the living marshmallows out of somebody because they laid hands on his brother, right? And you know, because his brother said something smart, right? But one time, right, and this is third grade, right? And this 3rd grade kid came in, and this other kid was, 5th grade, like his brother was 5th, right? And he, normal thing happened, but this kid was new. He had just come in the middle of the year. He laid hand on and actually, Greco brother, 5th grade flipped, right? So the Greco brother actually got into a fight in 5th grade, right? So brand new 5th grade student comes in and says something that the older Greco brother doesn't like, right? So he says, I'll see you after school. There was literally a place for it, like where these fights would happen. Like they'd be like, well, there's a field here, and there's the closest house like 200 feet, right? It was a thing, man. So the Greco brother approaches this new student, and the new student's like, hey, you don't want none of this. And he's like, hey, you need to apologize. I ain't apologizing to you. So the Greco brother, throws hands, right? Well, he didn't know. The kid actually knew karate, kicked him right in the knee, downed him, and gave him a swift kick right in the chest, right? Now, the older Greco brother, his younger brother was there, and immediately this third grader launched him at this karate expert who had just downed the older Greco brother. And what was surprising was the kid who knew karate did not actually beat down the younger brother. He just pushed him down and pushed him down and pushed him down, and then he walked away, right? And but the reality is both Greco brothers covered for each other. We have reached a point where Dungeons and Dragons has to cover for Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering makes so much money, it's been covering for Dungeons and Dragons for years. And Dungeons and Dragons never need to make a dime. It didn't need to make a single dime. It's always been protected by its older, by its brother, Magic the Gathering, right? And the reality is Magic the Gathering's in trouble, and it's now time for Dungeons and Dragons to aid Magic the Gathering. And guess what? It don't really matter even if the aid is effective, right? When it's time, you got to do what you got to do. You got to cover. Magic the Gathering's been covering for Dungeons and Dragons for decades. It's time for Dungeons and Dragons to cover for Magic the Gathering. That's where we are. All that's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion on if Dungeons and Dragons has the responsibility to stand up for its brother product. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.